I'm very excited about Doug Warren, our very own Doug Warren, who is our treasurer as well. If you've been here as long as I have, you will have seen Doug migrate from the very back all the way up to the front and be actually singing on stage, and he is it's been absolutely beautiful to have watched the unfoldment, the inspiration, the empowerment that I've witnessed in you over the years as you have continued to literally step forward, right, in all the different ways. He's a very accomplished singer-songwriter, and we are so delighted that he is now opening up to this new level of performance for us and sharing the beautiful gifts that he has inside. So please help me welcome Doug Warren.
All right. Well, this is going to be, in addition to my playing a couple of original songs here, it's a bit of an unveiling of a concept that our speaker today, Katie Grinham, who is, of course, an esteemed member of our community. And I have been working on some ideas about coordinating original music with the talk. So Katie's talk today is going to be about the three faces of God. And so what I have done in my songs is I've set up that each of the verses draws you into a different area of the song itself. So there's a level of 3 in each of these. And this first song is called When I Look. And essentially it's about what I experience when I come into this room and when I talk to people, when I look at people, and I actually look in their eyes. And I see that there's a connection there. It affirms within me that we all are spiritual beings and that connection is very real. So this song talks about what I experience and what I think everybody experiences when they genuinely look in somebody else's eyes. And deeper yet, when you actually physically touch someone. In the song it says, when I touch your hand is the lead to the next verse. And then beyond that is when I feel your love. And by that I mean spiritual love. When that sense of connection is so clearly established that it becomes a communal experience. So I'll start with this song called When I Look Into Your Eyes. When I look into your eyes, I really look into your eyes. For a moment, all the world becomes a paradise. suddenly I understand. Brave hearts so pure, in this moment, this magic moment, this endless moment, here and now. In this moment, this magic moment, this endless moment, here and now. Universal love is real. And when I feel your love, I mean really feel your love. All the boundaries between our spirits seem to be so clear. Drifting so free, in this moment, this magic moment, this endless moment, here and now. In this moment, this magic moment, this endless moment, here and now. Universal love is real.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Doug. I know. Do you see what I mean? What I'm talking about? Yeah, I think there's nothing more inspiring than to see and witness and watch and experience someone coming into their own empowerment and discovering those gifts and bringing them out into the world. I don't know. Maybe there's something better than that. I don't think so. Not chocolate. For sure. So our speaker this morning is Katie Grinham, and Katie, of course, is a member of our spiritual leadership team. She's also a prayer chaplain. She is, I would say, the lead instigator of most of what happens in the spiritual community. Comes from her vision of what she sees and what's important, and I so value her leadership and her friendship that we have shared over many years. She's also in her life outside community. You might not believe that she has a life outside community. She does. She's an amazingly talented craniosacral therapist. When I call her the body whisperer, because she can speak to my body and my body speaks back to her about what's really going on when I can't hear those words. So today she's going to share with us about grace and the three faces of God. Please help me welcome Katie Grinham.
Am I on now? There we go. Now. Okay, excellent. All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Wow, what a way to start, isn't it? I mean, having peer mediation people here talking about making a difference in connecting with teens and having them know that they're important in what they have to share. You know, it's very empowering work and exciting, and thank you so much for that. And then Doug sharing about that experience of really connecting deeply with people. And I think that's one of the really amazing things about being here at Uni of Calgary is because we have opportunities to do that. So this morning, we're going to talk about the three faces of God. And it's going to be a little bit of a journey, so you're going to have to do a little bit of work here this morning. There's going to be a couple of questions that I want you to reflect on, and then at the end there'll be a pop quiz. I won't do a pop quiz. But there are some really deep questions that I'd like to take a moment to reflect on. And these actually came from an article that was written by Karen Kelly in the Unity magazine back in 2013, underneath the topic of the three faces of God. And so these are the questions she asks. Is God inside us? Or is God outside us, the divine other to which we pray? Is God the totality of all that is physical in the universe? Or does God include and transcend everything manifest? Deep questions, right? And she says that perhaps all of these perspectives are true. An American philosopher and mystic, Ken Wilber, and the author of Integral Spirituality, says that perhaps the spirit and the spiritual wholeness that we're seeking can result from expressing and embracing all of these aspects and all of these faces of God. So, let's find out, shall we? Let's see what it is to look at the three faces of God. So what does that mean? Well, the first face of God is the I am. The first face of God is turning within. And it is the way that we often see in the Buddhist tradition, and we have here in Unity, the idea that the Christ lives within us. And so that is that inward place where we seek connection and expression through the Christ self. That's the first face of God. The second face of God is the relational God. That is part of us that is experiencing God on the outside by connecting and relating with other people. So just like in Doug's talk, when he talked about connecting, we have moments where we experience spirit, where we experience God by being in the presence of others and connecting and listening to them. And then the third face of God is the transcendent. So that's where we're in that moment and we experience God through our senses. It is that expansion, and we use lots of different words for that when we say, did you feel the flow or the energy or the love or the light? That is the transcendent experience of oneness. And that is the third face of God. So you might, in this moment, be thinking about, well, gee, those three faces of God, I can sense those in my life, and maybe you've even experienced the three faces of God here on a Sunday morning. But for me, it wasn't that easy necessarily to come to that understanding and peace about there being these three aspects of God. And certainly when I first came to Unity about, well, I don't know, a lifetime ago, I guess it wasn't that long, but it seemed long, about 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, I guess, and started hearing some of the teachings of unity and about this idea of spirit being within. And some of that really resonated with me, and some of it was confusing. I don't know about for you, but it was like I had the beliefs that I grew up with, and I was raised in the United Church, and so I had my understanding of God and Jesus that came from that time. And it wasn't like I wanted to hang on to those necessarily, but I had to make peace about it, right? Because it was my inner fabric. It's kind of where I came from. It's where I started. And so I had that going on, and then I had some of the teaching in unity, and it was kind of like, you know, quite frankly, it put me to a little bit of a spiritual crisis. I thought, I don't know what I think. I'm not sure what I believe. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing, because it stirs us up to learn and to know. But it isn't really comfortable. I'm sure you've noticed, right? It's kind of like, oh, I just love being confused. So, you know, in sitting in that, I was kind of holding it, and I guess intending and praying that I would have some answers. And not too long after that, I went to one of my first experiences of a Unity conference. And I thought, this is great. I'm going to be able to talk with someone there who can help me sort out my understanding of God. And I thought, this is going to be great. And so when I got there, I knew immediately when I saw her, I thought, I know who it is. It's Reverend Doris Lessings from Unity of Victoria. So I thought, well, I'm going to invite her to lunch, and then I can have this conversation with her about, you know, the nature of God, about what God is. So I was all excited about this. I was going to do it, so I managed to track her down and ask her if she would do that. She very graciously agreed. And then we ended up at Subway, which was less than sacred in my mind. I was like, already it's not fitting my pictures. But anyway, so we sat in Subway and had our discussion, and so that's what I asked her. You know, I began to speak about that I understood that there was this God within, because I could relate to that, and I felt that, and I felt that knowing of spirit within me. And then I had these other ways that I had been raised, you know, about how God was someone who was the comforter and who I could talk to when I was struggling, and would help me figure out things and help me plan my life and knew what was going on when I didn't. And she said, And then I said, well, and then of course, you know, then I've been a therapist. I've been a craniosacral therapist for many years. And when I'm working, I can feel the energy come through, and I'm very clear that part of the healing that happens for people is coming through from spirit, that is coming from the divine. So, you know, is that God? And I'm looking at her, you know, with this little face peeking over my Subway sandwich, hoping that, you know, I'm going to get the answers and I'm going to have peace of mind, finally. And she just looks at me and goes, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, waiting for more, and that's all she says is yes. And I'm like, well, yes, what? And finally she says, well, yes, those are all experiences of God. Those are all expressions of God. They're all ways that you can relate and connect and be and express God. And I'm like, oh, so it doesn't have to be one or the other. And she's like, no, we have that in our lives. And she said, I think if you spend a little time contemplating on this, that you'll see that. So I thought, well, great. You know, and I went away and I did feel better. I felt like, oh, okay, good, right? I can have that part of God that I can talk to and kind of seek guidance from, and that was very reassuring to me. But it wasn't completely settled. So I went into my life and came back, and of course was spending time here at Unity and getting more and more involved with the leadership and feeling like, wow, I really need to know a little bit more what's going on with this. And we took a course called what's it called again?
How to pray.
Oh, yeah, How to Pray Without Talking to God. And that was really insightful. I highly recommend that course. But part of what it began to talk about is that we didn't talk to the God on the outside, that it was really about affirming the truth of who we are. That in those prayers, which we do use here in Unity, is about affirming our good and the truth of who we are and standing in that and drawing from that. And that is the place to come from. So I thought, okay, that's good. All right, that piece works. I'm good with that. But it still wasn't all completely coming together because there's a part of me that wants to do things right. I don't know about you guys. I was like, I want to get this right. So there's that, and then there's this, but, can't we tidy it up a little bit more? Like, couldn't it, it still felt like there was some loose ends that weren't all tidied up for me. And with that, of course, came another answer, and I was thinking, well, what more can I do around this? And so I took a course called Prayer through Worldwide Unity. And in that course, they introduced this concept of the 3 faces of God. And this was the work of Ken Wilber. And I was like, oh, that makes sense to me, that there can be these 3 faces. And in fact, he speaks that it's the way that we have the richness of spirit, that we really can't not be other than that it's quite natural. That we're going to spend some time being inward and reflective and connecting with that still, quiet place within to feel the peace and know that we are not our minds. That we're not our jobs, and that we're not our families or our mistakes, or even, quite frankly, our dreams. That we are that precious spirit that flows through us with no effort. And that we also need to know that when we're connecting with people and we feel something significant, when we do see in their eyes just what Doc was talking about, that's real too. And how wonderful it is to spend time reading about spiritual things and talking to other people about how they experience God. I don't know about you, but I've never met anyone who has the exact same perspective on spirit, divine, whatever you want to call it, that I do. Even though we gather here together, we all have a unique expression of how we see it. And I think that's because we are it. And so I thought, this makes sense to me. This brings this together, the 3 faces of God. And I was thankful for that sense that we can use all of these as ways to do that. And with that we can expand way past our limited thinking, way past how we think we have to be or should be. And quite frankly, even past the words, like really none of these words, as you know, express. Have you ever tried to tell someone about a spiritual experience you have? Right? What happens? It just feels like it just kind of falls. So you try and take this huge kind of experience into this little moment, and it just doesn't feel the same. And so we have this opportunity to look at God in this way, in these different ways. But there's also the other side of the coin, as there always is in everything. And that is, there are some limitations and some drawbacks to each of those faces of God as well. If we spend too much time if we just focus on one and not the other, I can see there being limitations. So for example, if we spend too much time in the I am, in the meditation, and just feeling like we are one and expressing that, don't we become a little disconnected from the world? You know, there's a saying, you become no earthly good if we spend too much time there. It's like, then you can't function in your life. You start believing that the physical has nothing to offer you. And people struggle with their finances and with their families and with the things you have to do to live in this world if you spend too much time there. And in the second level, the second face of God, if you spend too much time there, then you're running around thinking that someone on the outside has all the answers. That this book will be the way, or this information is the answer. And we put expectations on ourselves about how we're supposed to be. Oh, I'm supposed to be like that. More compassionate, more understanding, more this, more that. And there's a feeling of not being enough if we spend too much time in the second face of God. And then the third face of God, when it is about the oneness and the expansion, and that it's all good. Right? Can you see where that one goes? It's wonderful, but if we spend all our time there, often people don't take time to reflect personally and take some personal responsibility for their life and the co-creation. What can I learn? How can I grow? What can I do to be all that I am and to be part of the oneness? So I think it's really important to realize that there's so much to experience and think about when we look at all the different faces and aspects of God. And it's helped me kind of let go of the rules or try and tidy it all up. And I've been using the word God here quite a bit this morning because that's how Ken Wilber described it. But really, you can use anything that means something to you. You know, whether it be love or light or the divine feminine. But I think if you look, you would see those three aspects in that as well. The three aspects in the divine feminine. Your personal experience of it within, and how the divine feminine and masculine move through you. And then there would be how you relate to others, using that and empowering and connecting and talking about yourself in relationship. And then of course the difference that it would make in our world if there were some of those qualities that we attribute to the divine feminine. How would that help the oneness? So you see, there's really no limitations to how we can look at this. And I wanted to talk about it today because I think sometimes when we start focusing things, that it can become quite limited. So when I first came to Unity, I started wondering if I had to let go of some of the aspects I had of my childhood God that were important to me. The idea that I could reflect and get guidance and feel like there was some sort of divine order in my life. And as you hear the different aspects of our service, don't you see that here in Unity? Right? We have our meditation, which is the time in the I am. We have the sharing of the speaker about different perspectives and how each speaker experiences the divine, and we learn about that. And then we have our music that does a bit of both. It often talks about, you know, God is my source, God is my power. I am only here for God. And that's the relational part. And then, if we're fortunate enough, somewhere within the time that we spend together each Sunday morning, we get a moment of grace. We get a moment when we experience the oneness. When the lyrics of a song touch us, when something is said, when somebody reads the daily word and you feel them and connect with them. We get that moment. And for me, it is my hope that every time you come here, every time you spend time in community, that you have a moment of grace. That you have that feeling of Spirit moving through each of us and using us and expressing through us with just an ease and a love that needs no explanation, that does not need to be in 3 parts. So I hope that this has expanded your understanding, and it's not like, you know, this is the way. I did not get a download on the scoop. But I do hope that it is something that you can reflect on and use in your life. So thank you, and let's take this into meditation, shall we? Oh, actually, that's not the one we're doing. I forgot to tell them to change the slide. Oh, that's okay. I think you remember this. No, it's my fault. I asked Vivian to change it, but I didn't think. But I think perhaps the one we are going to use is, people might remember, which are, you are the face of God.
Oh.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
Right?
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
I think we can do that. Don't you think?
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
And just taking a deep breath in and slowly out. And resting into those words. You are the face of God. Oh, how reassuring this is. To know that you are the face of God. That there's nothing you have to do to earn it. And there's nothing you can do to lose it. It is like your breath. It is in you. It is around you. It is around all of us, sustaining us. Teaching us, guiding us, and most of all, loving us, and allowing us to be expressions of love. How great is that? How great is it to know that you are an expression, a very unique expression of the divine. that there's nothing random about who you are. Your unique way of speaking, of moving, your creativity, your skills, your simplicity, even your struggles are all uniquely for you. For you to move through and express fully the aspect of God that you are, that no one can be but you. That's how important you are. That's how important each and every one of us are. For nobody is more than just one person. But your essence is like a drop of water in the ocean. And yet that drop of water, and the next drop of water, and the next drop of water is what nourishes us all. So breathe in deep and slowly out, and rest into this. Take a moment now in silence to be in the very essence, the very I am of who you are. And becoming aware of the beating of your heart and your breath coming in and out. And feeling how delicious it is to spend time in the I am, to spend time in quiet, in the still silence. And I encourage you to spend time in that place each and every day. And now we bring ourselves back to this place, the place where we get to have the relational experience of God, a place of grace, of joy, of light, and love. We're so thankful for this time together, and so it is.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are a part of me.
such a deep and philosophical spiritual experience, I'm reminded of the immortal words of Groucho Marx. He was walking out of his studio one day, and a pastor came up to him on the street, and he said, you know, I just love your humor, and in fact, my mother and I listen to your radio shows all the time, and she really loves your humor as well. And he looked straight at him and he said, I didn't know you guys had mothers. And another thing that Groucho Marx also said is that life is just a great big knock-knock joke, and you get to start it. And when you think about that, you know, a knock-knock joke is knock-knock, and the other person says, who's there? And that's really the big question about life, isn't it? Who are you here to be? This next song that I'm going to play delves into that a little bit. You know, but really, who are you here to be? And again, it's set up in three different verses, and it really deals with being in the right place at the right time with the right energy. So those three things combined, and I think that's what we have here. It tends to be the right place, the right time, and the right energy. This next song is called A Place of Love, which I think is quite appropriate for unity. Let's get straight to the heart, my dear. For there's a place that is growing near, a place of happiness, a place of light, a place of peacefulness, and a place of love, and that place is here. Now let's get straight to the point, my dear. For there's a time that is drawing time of happiness, a time of light, a time of peacefulness, and a time of love, and that time is now. Come with me, let's dream together. Come with me, let's dream as one. Come, let's hold the vision here of a world of gentle songs, dancing in the sun. Now let's get straight to the source, my dear. For we share feelings that are strong and pure. dancing in